Okay, thanks, Rich, and thanks, Sarah, for inviting me along. And as Rich has just said there, if you've got any questions as I go through what I'm going to say, then by all means ping them out, and I'll try and answer them. Certainly, if Rich, you can pick them up on the comments bar, that would be really helpful. So I got a little bit of a brief around, giving you a little bit of insight into, being in the fire and rescue service and my career, particularly given the fact that I'm now the Chief Fire Officer for Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. So let me do a little bit of introductions in the first instance. So I am Phil Garrigan. I'm the Chief of Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, and I've been in the Fire and Rescue Service for 31 years now. I started, when I was about 6. No, that's not quite true. I started when I was 20. Okay, and I'll talk to you a little bit about, my little bit of a journey before I joined the Fire and Rescue Service. But as I say, I've been working for Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service for 31 years. But like anything else, when I was, just around your age, so I'm assuming you're probably 16, 17, 18s and through. I went to Maricourt High School in Maghull, and before that I went to St George's Primary School, equally that was in Maghull, and before that I was in Physicality, and before that I was born in Bootle. So working backwards, I was born in Bootle, moved to Physicality for probably a couple of years of my life, moved to Maghull, and then done my schooling through St George's Primary School and then onto Maricourt eventually. And what would I say about my academic achievements? I've probably relatively average academically, if I'm honest with you, and I'll talk about working hard now, important working hard is in achieving things in life. I was reasonably decent at sport, spent a lot of time in school playing a lot of sport, and then come out with what was at the time 9 O-levels, but they were probably 9 O-levels around a grade C, so that's probably grade C and B, no A's in my results, and that probably gave me akin to 4, 5, 6 maybe now. And then I was kind of pondering what to do, went on to study some A-levels. So I did A-levels in chemistry, physics and biology, and what was general studies at the time, don't even know what that's called now. And I come out of my A-levels with a couple of A-levels really, because physics is really hard, if you didn't already know that. So I didn't pass physics, I passed general studies, but that doesn't really count. And then I got biology and chemistry, and didn't really get the qualifications that I wanted to go to university. So at the point in time, I was kind of humming and hawing what to do with them. I did want to do sports science, that didn't kind of work out that way. So I ended up going to Nottingham Polytechnic. Right? And polytechnics don't exist anymore, right? But they used to in my day. It's now called Trent University, okay, but it was Nottingham Polytechnic at the time. And I went there to study chemistry, because if I'm honest with you, I didn't really know what to do at that particular point. I'd thought about, and again, when I was probably, maybe 10, 11, 12, I thought about, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I was like, actually, wouldn't mind. I went to do chemistry, and whilst I was doing my chemistry degree, my mum sent me an advert for a firefighter in Merseyside, and said, here's an opportunity here. So I kind of filled it in with not giving it a second thought really, and put it into the process. And then as I was going forward, each stage during, because at that time there's probably about 6 or 7 stages that you'd go through, from the application through to an assessment, through to interview, through to the physicals, and so on and so forth. I was just kind of, every time that I'd get the next stage, I'd go back home, I'd do what was required, and then I'd come back again, and spent probably my university or my polytechnic life playing football, right? Okay, and very little else. And I mean, I did very little chemistry while I was there. Not that I'm saying that's a good thing, but that's probably the reality of the matter. So I got to a point where I'd kind of progressed right the way through the Fire and Rescue Service recruitment process, and I was offered a job, and I had to make a decision then whether I would kind of stay on and finish my degree, and become a chemist, or I would join the fire and rescue service. So I kind of pondered it a little bit, and I thought, you know what, not necessarily necessarily enjoying the university life, but certainly I was kind of spending probably a bit too much time playing football. So I went to see made me a decision, decided I was going to join the fire service, and I went to see the guy who was the tutor for the course, and I kind of know that I made the right decision when I said to him, look, I'm just going to let you know, I'm leaving, I'm going to join the fire and rescue service. To which he said, Phil, I thought you'd already left. So that was probably a good decision in my mind to join the fire and rescue service back in 1990. So, you know, a little bit of a distance away now. But the best thing I've ever done. Okay, and the best kind of career path that I could ever have chosen. So I started, you know, as I say, back in March 1990, and then I spent, at the time, about 17 weeks on the recruit course. It's not like that now, it's a bit short, it's about 15 weeks. I'll talk about that maybe a little later if you've got any questions for me. And you know, the recruit course was tough. It's meant to be tough. You know, it stretched me in you know, different areas, because I was just turned 20, so I was quite young, and I was going on to a recruit course with people who were in their 30s. God, they were ancient to me. But you know, they were men, funny enough, and they were all men. And I'll come back to that in a second. The first female firefighter was on the course just before me. Whoever joined Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, we've now got 100 odd plus female firefighters now, and we're better for that. But the fact of the matter is, I was on an all male course with people who I described as men, and I still thought of myself as a kid. But I was physically fit. I was, you know, relatively strong. I was quite academically bright in that kind of context, having done me O levels, done me A levels, and started the degree. So got through it with a few bumps in the road, like everyone did in that kind of point, because it is quite a challenging course. And was recruited then into Merseyside on the back of that, and spent my first probably 5-6 years in a fire station called Buckley Hill. It doesn't exist anymore. It's built in Netherton. It got knocked down, and we rebuilt a new station there. And you know, whilst I was at Buckley Hill, that was me kind of my formative years of turning my skills that I'd gleaned from the recruit course into my firefighting. At which point, probably about 5-6 years in, I thought to myself, do you know what? Actually, I might want to see if I can progress a little bit now. And they had roles called leading firefighter, so I moved into a leading firefighter role, and then proceeded to move all round the service. And when I mean all round the service, from as far afield as Southport to Speke to Old Swan to Toxteth to Birkenhead, and so on and so forth. And I moved through leading firefighter to sub-officer to station officer. Some of those ranks don't exist anymore, but the fact of the matter is, you know, started to progress through the organisation. On the basis of just want to continue to stretch myself, and then seeing myself get into a position and saying about the next one, do you know what? I think I could do that. Never really had a 5-year plan, never even dreamt of ever becoming the Chief Fire Officer for Merseyside Fire. I was much more about doing the best I could do, being the best person I could be every day, and serving the public to the best of my ability. So I would step through leading firefighter to sub-officer to station officer, and then it would start to become more managerial, but equally a better ability to influence what was going on around me, and again, you know, and better protecting the public. So I then moved into probably station management roles, and then into headquarters a little bit more than I'd probably been. So moving from an operational firefighter, an operational role, into one which was more office-based. Most of my day is spent more around meetings and conversations these days. Very little is on the fire ground, albeit I'm still operationally competent. I still go onto the fire ground on occasion when we have large incidents, big fires, and so on. And you know, I'm still, you know, competent to be able to fulfil that role should I need to. More often than not, those big jobs don't occur that frequently. So I'm more based in the headquarters, and that becomes a different role in itself, just managing people and, you know, and getting fire engines, changing the way we do certain things. And I'll talk about that maybe in a little bit more detail. But, you the career of a firefighter is and has been amazing for me. And what do I mean by that? More around the personal bits. Well, we all want to go to find a job that you love, right? Because if you love the job that you do, then you never have to go to work. And I started off, and the best way I could describe working on a fire station, it was like at the time when I joined anyway, it's a little different, but there's still the atmosphere is still the same. It was like going to a youth club. It was like going to the best experiences I probably could have would be either in work or at the time, with my colleagues who I worked with. It was just brilliant. And the role is dead dynamic as well. So you go in, you'd be surrounded by like-minded individuals, really focused on supporting, the public. And then you go to operation instance, and it would change. So one minute you'd be going to a road traffic collision, the next minute you'd be going to a fire, the next minute you'd be going to get someone out of a lift, the next minute you'd be going to do some work fitting smoke alarms in someone's home, visiting a business premises. Every day, then and now, is different. And that's what I loved about the dynamic nature of the job. It was just, I wasn't coming into work and doing the same thing, and I was surrounded by people who were just brilliant kind of company. And it's still the same. The role that the firefighter does and the kind of the status that they have in the community is really quite special. So it's not like a normal job. You go in and you can make a real difference, and you make a real difference in the lives of people who are maybe particularly vulnerable. And so what I've said to firefighters as we've recruited them in, and I sit with them quite often now on the first day, and I talk to them about how they've been recruited. I say you've all been recruited on your values, not necessarily your physical attributes, right? On what makes you tick, what's inside you, rather than how you physically look, right? Because that's really important. Because I can take anyone off the street and turn them into a firefighter if a firefighter is just about putting ladders up and putting fires out. But actually, the role is far more extended than that. And the work that we do is far more extended than that. So our firefighters do a significant amount of work around prevention and protection, but actually, and people who you work with quite regularly work around the whole organisation too. So prevention and the work that we do around young people is incredibly important to me. I lead on that work nationally for the Fire and Rescue Service, amongst a few other things. And what that is about. And I say it in some of the Prince's Trust celebration events that we host, but there's I take as much out of our ability to save lives in an operational context as I do in regards to how we can save and transform lives that we do with young people. And so we have a real place in the community, and that's really important to me and the Fire and Rescue Service and the people who work within it. So it's not just about fires and firefighting, it's about it's about saving people in other ways, and our work extends, as I say, into going to people's homes and providing smoke alarms and talking to the most vulnerable. But a lot of the work that we do around youth engagement is focused on giving the people in the communities that we serve a real opportunity to thrive and develop and grow. And that's an incredibly important part. And that's where I become really privileged as the Chief Fire Officer, because I can set some of that direction. I can make sure that Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service does some of the things that other fire and rescue services don't. But the fact of the matter is, us and all of our staff being able to contribute to improve the outcomes for the public is massively important to me. So, I don't know whether people are thinking about joining the Fire and Rescue Service or in the future. I know certainly some of you probably are, and some of you may well have some questions for me or Demi. I don't know whether she's joined yet, but obviously Demi's one of my newest firefighters. But the fact of the matter is, it is an incredible career. It's not just a job. It's something you have to be incredibly passionate about. And most of my firefighters, and in fairness, most of my staff stay in the organisation for long periods of time because we look after you, and certainly we look after you so you can look after the community in the way that I've kind of described. So hopefully that's covered off a fair number of the questions, Richard, that you'd kind of posed to me to maybe try and respond to. Every day is different, but the most important thing is the impact that we have in our communities, and the things that we do are just quite special. And not everyone has that opportunity to go into work knowing that they've got the potential to save a life or transform a life, and extend that across the whole organisation. So just before I conclude and open it up to maybe some questions, because I'll then be able to expand on maybe some of the questions, you look at the breadth of the work that we do, and I talk about firefighting, I talk about road traffic collisions, I talk about some of the work we do around prevention, some of the work we do in youth engagement. As it stands in relation to the whole societal response to the pandemic, I've got firefighters who are being trained to drive ambulances at this moment in time, and I've got a whole raft of people in all parts of the organisation who are volunteering to administer vaccinations. So if you've been up to St Helens, your mum has, or your dad has, or your granddad has, or your grandma has, they may well have got jabbed in the arm by a firefighter, or a member of the prevention team, or a member of the prevention team, or Maria, or a whole multitude of other people. So, and that's the real kind of opportunity that comes with being in the fire and rescue service, that ability to make someone's life a little bit different. And so when you hear stories of someone saying to one of our prevention team, do you know what, I haven't been out the house for 12 months and you've just kind of vaccinated me, and now I can go out and I can go home, and for the first time my granddaughter can come round and I can give her a hug. That's incredibly impactful, and that's the beauty and the benefits of working for such a service which is in the heart of its communities.
Do you know what level English and Maths you need?
Yeah, so if you've got your GCSEs, Charles, so it's a level 4, like that we would normally expect. Now, so give us an insight. Have you got level 4 qualifications in English Maths?
No, all I've got is the functional skills.
Right, okay. Now, sometimes, and dependent on how they apply, so if they cross-map against the level 4 qualification, that might be acceptable. The other thing I would say to you is, because we don't prohibit people applying who haven't got their English and Maths, what we do is we run a English and Maths test. So as part of the assessment, you would do that. And so you would have an opportunity to do a little bit of study, maybe get yourself a little bit of a tutor around English and Maths before you apply, build up your skills, and then you would, if you pass our tests, which are the equivalent of a level 4 qualification, then you would be able to progress through the process. So you can either directly go through on the basis of having English and Maths GCSEs, or you can go through our process. So you're not prohibited from that. So let me just give you a little bit of an insight into some of the things that you do need to have to become a firefighter. So you need to be over 17 and a half. Okay, and 17 and a half is really because you probably take half a year getting into the process, and then you join us at 18. Right, you need to have a driving license, and because a lot of our firefighters now immediately start to drive the fire engine, and so you need to kind of work on your driving license if you haven't got one. You have to live in Merseyside, and that's a bit of a change for us more recently, but what we wanted to do is give people of Merseyside the real opportunity to be employed by an incredible employer, of which Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service is. And when we first opened recruitment, we were getting people from all over the country who were all applying to come into Merseyside, and we decided that we wanted to kind of maybe restrict it to those people who live in our area. You don't have to be a certain height, you don't have to be a certain weight, you don't have to be, you can be male, female, you can come from any background whatsoever. The fact of the matter is, because we have the qualifications set at a level 4 or a level 2 functional skills in English and Maths, and we have the ability for people to pass that test, we really are opening it up to all parts of our communities, because we want to be reflective of the communities that we serve. And to be really reflective of the communities we serve, you want to be able to get people from all types of background and all areas across Merseyside, because I think that is better equips us to deal with all of the issues that we've got. So that gives you a little bit of an insight. The course lasts 15 weeks. The job is a 42-hour week, which sounds quite a lot, but what you normally do is work 2 days and then 2 nights, and then have 4 days clear from work. So it's four shifts compressed more often than not. or you can do 4 days, or you can work on a different duty system. But you get a little bit of time away from work, so people love that part of the job. And a firefighter, when they join, again, because the pay bit's interesting, isn't it? So when the firefighter joins as they're a trainee, they're on £23,800. But by the time they've done their qualifications, so they've gained competency in the role, they would be on around about £35,000. So not a bad level of pay, albeit I would like them to be on a little bit more, and so would they. But the fact of the matter is, that's probably what a firefighting role would be. Yeah. So then, as I say, so then you've got other roles which exist across Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. So we have people who work in prevention, people who work in youth engagement, you work with every day, people who work in protection, which is like business fire safety, and then you've got a whole number of other jobs that exist in the service. So people who work buying things, people who are in finance departments, people who fix our fire engines, and so on and so forth. So there's lots and lots of different roles other than just a firefighting role. So look, that's a long-winded answer to your question, Charles, but if you want to become a firefighter, there's a little bit of work maybe to do around your English and maths, but it shouldn't stop you joining Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. So come back to the main thing you need to have is a real good, strong sense of values and a real kind of sense of purpose and a real commitment to help the public.
I've got a question from Samuel. He said, you mentioned about how looks and physicality relates to people in the fire service. I was wondering if you could expand on that, if you can. Yeah,
the kind of the key bit for us is, as I said there, about your values. We recruit people on the values. So it's got nothing to do with looks or physicality. We do some physical tests. So our recruitment through, people do an application form. And they submit the application form based on their experiences and based on answering some questions. That's done, as the first start of the process. Then, as you run through, we do some online assessments, and then we move on to doing some physical tests. So the only thing that would limit you is the ability to pass those physical tests. So there's a swim test, so you've got to be able to swim, and we've got which I suppose I would describe as like an aerobic test. So you have to get a certain level on the aerobics test. So if those of you might be familiar with a bleep test, it's quite similar to that, but it's not the bleep test. You would get a certain level of physical fitness, and that would be fine. And then you would get a strength test as well to make sure that you are physically strong enough to do the role. Outside of that, you can be male, female, black, white. It doesn't make a jot of difference to us. You've just got to be able to meet those physical standards that we've set. After that, you would go to an assessment centre, and the assessment centre is all about your values, all about what makes you tick, all about what makes you want to join the fire and rescue service in the first instance. And then you move from there into doing an interview. And the interview, and it's quite an important part of what I'll say now, the interview is very much based on your experiences, and your experiences in regards to the circumstances, how you've overcome adversity, how you've connected with the community, whether you volunteer, how you deal with challenging situations, and so on and so forth. So a whole raft of interview questions which you would draw on your experiences. And I go back to when I was 19 and going through the process. I didn't have a whole huge amount of evidence and experience because I hadn't done a great deal, right? And you may find yourself in that position. So what I say as a piece of advice when people are looking to join the fire and rescue service, I say, well, look, create yourself some opportunities, whether that be doing your Duke of Edinburgh, whether it be about going on a Prince's Trust team programme, whether it be about going and volunteering in your local network, whether it's going and volunteering for Thrive, whatever it might be. That gives you real examples for when you're sat in front of someone and you're trying to be a little bit different from the next person who comes in. And they ask you a question of, so what have you done with your community? When you go, well, I've been involved in this, I've been involved in that, we've done this community event, we've generated some money, etc. It just gives you that little bit of advantage. The other thing I would say is, don't ever go into an interview where you don't know anything about the organisation you are going to join or you want to join. And we have that. We have some people turn up and someone will say, so what do you know about Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service? Yeah, well, not a great deal, really. So never set foot into an interview room unless you know a little bit about the organisation you want to join and why you want to join it.
Chloe asks, how do you get onto the training course?
Okay. So Chloe, where we are at this moment in time, we've been fortunate to continue to recruit in really quite healthy numbers over the course of the last number of years, and we'll do so again this year. So normally about November, we will put out an advert, and we will lead in and we'll utilise social media quite a significant amount these days. So it would be sensible, if you wanted to be a firefighter, to follow us on Twitter, or to follow us on Facebook or other Instagram, or whatever else it may be. Then we start to push some communications out saying, yeah, get ready. We're going to open the adverts out relatively shortly. And once that advert goes out, we are normally inundated with requests for people to become firefighters. And so we get, in a nice plus way, thousands of people coming forward to become firefighters in the service, which is really positive from my perspective, but quite challenging and quite competitive from yours. So you need to give yourself a little bit of an edge. So as I say to you, you need to go on and have an understanding about what we're about. So you need to understand what our values are. You need to kind of say to yourself, well, if there's a value and it's about I don't know, constructive challenge, or it's about empathy, so working with the community, well, have I got examples of where I can show that I've done some of those things? And that will help you as you go through the application process. Equally, what's really kind of powerful at all points is to go and visit your local fire station, and ask the crews there to give you a bit of advice around what the role is, what's good about the job, what's bad about the job, what they enjoy. They will equally, they'll take you around the fire station, they'll take you around under normal circumstances anyway. They'll take you around a fire engine, they'll help you roll out a length of hose and roll it back up again. They'll talk to you about the physical tests. They'll talk to you about their personal experiences, and some of our newer firefighters, they will have gone through the same process that you would want to be going through, Klaus. So, first things first is I'd go to your local fire station. I'd ask them for a little bit of an insight into what the role's about. Then I'd get myself onto the social media platforms. I'd make sure I was following us, and then as soon as the opportunity comes out, I would submit my application, and I would start to think about submit my application before the application comes out. So start to think about examples of areas that you've worked on and experiences that you've had, which would lend themselves to someone wanting to work in Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. Equally, we have volunteers. You could go and help and support the volunteers. And I'm sure, if you went and spoke to some of the youth engagement teams, they would equally talk to you about their roles and how kind of extensive the work that we do is.
Jack says, I live in Ormskirk, which is in West Lancs, but I do have a Liverpool postcode. Would this still mean I would be unable to apply for Merseyside?
Yeah, look, yes, you would. And if you were my son or daughter, I would say apply. What we might do at a point in time, dependent on your postcode, depending on exactly where you live, you might have to move. Right? And that sounds quite significant, that, doesn't it? But actually, you're moving to have a career for life. But actually, given the geographical location, you may be able to respond into some of our stations within the timescales that are set. So we'd have to take a look at that. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with that in the first instance. It would be a nice choice to have to make. Is you're joining Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, and we might have to move you to Orton, which is a little bit nicer than Ormskirk. No, I'm only joking. But actually, given I give you the real example of when I was asked the question on my interview, right? And I lived in McGull at the time, so he said to me, this could have been the end of my career in Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, I hasten to add, because he said to me, where's your closest fire station? And I said Ormskirk. Right, and Ormskirk was Lancashire, and obviously Buckley Hill was Merseyside. I think I got away with it because actually we're not that far away, and I think they're probably about 3 or 4 miles either way. But that's so you're you're not too far away from the Merseyside footprint, and depending on your postcode, you might actually fall inside of the area which we would define as being suitable.
Jackass, do you have any idea when the community safety apprenticeship will be out? Testing you.
That is testing me there. No, I don't. So I'd only be having a stab in the dark. I know we are, because we had the conversation yesterday about more extensive utilisation of apprentices. Community safety advisor is one of those roles. So I would suspect we normally try and tie it up with the academic year. So it's probably likely to be around the September time. So as the kind of the school year starts, the apprenticeship programme starts. So as we're now creeping towards, well, not necessarily, but the summer holidays and so on, it would likely be around the September period, but we'd start to communicate that a little bit more over the course of the next number of months. I'll come back to the bit about serving, and and as a public service, that's what we do, and serve the public to the best of our ability, and that's what drives me. And we'll ask Demi in a second. That's probably why Demi joined the Fire and Rescue Service, to help people, because that's what we all do, really, to try and make a difference. So that, and that's quite a powerful thing to be able to say when you go home, I've made a difference in someone's life, and that was what motivates us all, whether you be a firefighter or whether you be in youth engagement. And that bit about the thrive and giving young people an opportunity, that is really important to this fire and rescue service. It's not always the same across every fire and rescue service, but a significant number are really invested in the communities that they are a part of. And I want to be, and I want Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service to be part of those communities, and equally recognise that, do you know what, there's huge amounts of inequalities that exist across Merseyside. And sometimes, if you're young, you're trying to embark on a career, you're looking at a job, you don't know what you want to do, then sometimes someone needs to put their arm around you and look after you a little bit and steer you a little bit. That's what Thrive does. That's what the Prince's Trust team programme does. That's what my staff, who are amazing in regards to the team leaders in the Prince's Trust and the assistants. And that's because, you know what, sometimes you just need someone in your life to just give you a little bit of a steer. And then it pays dividends not only for the individual but also the organisation. So we are better for the work that we do in our communities. There's no doubt about that. So it's whilst it's great for the people who benefit, it's also really selfish from me. I want my firefighters to be in the heart of the community, and because I go back to them being really well connected and being better at the job because they are in the communities. Fire and Rescue Service is an incredible organisation, and it's an incredible career. So for anyone who is considering a job in the future, it goes way beyond just being a job. It really is something that will give you an opportunity to change and transform the lives of people across the whole of Merseyside. So I would welcome any one of you as a future recruit into Merseyside. So good luck with whatever career aspirations you've got, and whatever focus you have. Remember some things, right? And again, I'll probably sum up with a couple of bits which I think are quite important, and they're quite important for any organisation, but particularly this one, and particularly you as individuals through the rest of your life. And you're gonna be courageous. Okay, courage is an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing in the context of a fire and rescue service, because courage isn't necessarily going into a burning building, although that's part of our job. Courage is putting yourself forward to it for the job. Courage is going into a Prince's Trust team room when you don't know anyone. So be courageous, because if you're not courageous in your life, then you probably won't attain anything. And so some things are difficult to get, and so don't be fearful of making a mistake or getting some stuff wrong. Right. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing I'll just say to you, as I said to him from the outset, I wasn't the brightest person in school, right? But I'll tell you one thing I have done throughout my whole career is work really hard, right? And if you work really hard, you can attain anything in life. I never thought I would become the Chief Fire Officer for Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, and I'm blown away to have achieved that. It's kind of it's something I'd never thought I would ever attain, but I've attained it by working really, really hard. So don't underestimate that.